Hi there, welcome to Urbinary, the podcast cataloging the everyday and extraordinary in the city.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Urbinary. I'm Hoi, and today I'm here with Stefan Baars. He is a PhD student at TU Dortmund University. His main research interests lie in the area of planning conflicts, public participation, and the role of emotions and affects in planning. He currently works in a research project called LocoNet that addresses these topics. Stefan discusses the increasing interest in emotions among planning theorists, particularly in conflictual planning processes, challenging the prevailing emotion rationality ontology. It highlights the scarcity of empirical research and methodological reflections, focusing on the methodological challenges of researching emotions in planning conflicts, drawing on insights from various approaches, and aiming to establish a transdisciplinary discussion between practitioners and researchers.
Urbinary.
So, hi, Stefan. Welcome to our podcast. In the abstract, you stress the importance of considering the role of emotions both in planning processes and within academia. Why do you believe this is an important matter to consider?
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I think that emotions are still somewhat neglected in planning literature and also in planning practice, and that is also in difference to other disciplines that have focused more on emotions in the last couple of years, like geography, for example, or sociology. And I think that is because it somehow shakes up the foundations of planning, to think of rational decisions and the belief that planners can take rational decisions. And but I think if you have ever been to a public participation event, for example, you can easily see that emotions play a very big role in planning processes. And I think for planners, it is better to reflect on emotions and to think about emotions in planning process rather than to neglect them and to keep them out of the planning equation, so to say.
So, I think that's very interesting because it sort of also humanizes the entire process. So, what are your discoveries regarding the methodological challenges of researching emotions in the context of planning conflicts?
Yeah, I think there are maybe two problems to it, or two challenges. Let's put it like that. The first is it is already a challenge in itself to research emotions in general in qualitative research. So because emotions are generally quite vague and they're up to interpretation of the researcher to extent. Um, they are limited to also the emotional vocabulary that the person has you're talking with or you're observing. Um, so you really have to look for metaphors, for emotion words, for tonality in language, speed, volume, things like that. And that's already yeah difficult to analyze. And then the other thing is to observe people. That's another option you have. um, and then it's also, I think, important to think about how do I feel myself, what is the atmosphere of a situation that I'm observing here, and to also take that into consideration. And but these are, I think, general problems to, or their general challenges to researching emotions. And when it comes to planning conflicts, I think it's important to understand that the researcher, once you step into a conflict and try to learn about it, you kind of become part of the conflict yourself, if you want or not. And you don't necessarily take sides or something like that, but just by researching a conflict, you influence it already. And I think this is important to reflect upon.
So, it's a little bit like an ethnographic practice in planning as well. So you also mentioned a workshop involving researchers and planning practitioners aimed at opening up spaces for mutual reflection on the emotional dimensions of planning conflicts. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so this was a workshop seminar I did with some colleagues of mine at TU Dortmund, but also within a transdisciplinary organization team with another research institute and an organization that does municipal conflict resolution. And we were quite at the beginning of our research and tried to establish a format to discuss what we found out so far, which was mostly from literature, but then also to get some input of practitioners, what they have experienced in terms of planning conflicts. So it was about the role of emotions in planning conflicts, basically, and we had two workshop formats. One was I would call them story roundtables, where practitioners could share a story about a conflict with others and reflect upon that. And then the second phase was a form of conflict analysis that we introduced in the workshop, and we encouraged them to analyze their own conflicts, so to say. And we tried to systemize these stories that came out of this workshop with a view to conflict causes, parties involved, and the emotions described. For us that was try to find a way to get access to the topic of emotions from planners themselves, instead of observing them or just interviewing, but we try to do that more on level playing field. So
Urbinary.
So let's tackle a crucial challenge now. So bridging the gap between academia and the broader community. So how can we foster meaningful connections and collaboration to translate academic insights into real-world impact?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question for sure. I don't know if I have like the solution to that, but what I would argue is that it's always important to stay in contact with practitioners throughout the whole process of your research, and not just come up with the solutions when you have the results of your research, but also try to engage with practitioners at the beginning and see if you're even asking the right questions, or if the relevance of your research is really there. And I think that is a crucial point. And then I think it's also important to accept that you have different kinds of knowledges, so that are equally important. And I think there you have to try to find a way of communication where these kinds of knowledges can meet.
Okay. So thank you very much for being with us today, Stefan, and thank you very much for sharing your very interesting and insightful study.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Thank you.
Urbinary.
And for our listeners, stay tuned for our next episode with Giulia Oldani. In the next episode, she will be discussing the shift towards holistic planning approaches and the COPET summer school's role in addressing these changes. Urbinary is produced in collaboration with Polyradio, the official radio channel at Politecnico di Milano.
Urbinary, the podcast cataloging the everyday and extraordinary in the city.